Project-based learning is one of the trickiest things in education. We all want to do it, but we don't really know how. Welcome to the Hack Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Barnes, bringing you right now solutions to some of your biggest teaching and learning problems. Now, let's hack learning. I got out my bed early this morning, down the road. Okay, so maybe we don't all not know how to do project-based learning. A lot of people are fairly good at it, and we are very fortunate today on the Hack Learning Podcast to have a couple of experts. We are joined by the authors of Hacking Project-Based Learning, 10 Easy Steps to PBL and Inquiry in the Classroom, by Ross Cooper, a curriculum supervisor from Salisbury Township School District in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and his good friend, at least I think most of the time they're good friends, Erin Murphy, middle school assistant principal from East Penn School District in Magungie, Pennsylvania. I just love saying Magungie. That is awesome. So, Erin and Ross, welcome to the Hack Learning Podcast. I'm very excited to talk about project-based learning because when I was a classroom teacher, I was very much into project-based learning, but I can tell you in the beginning, I was just horrible at it. And it took me a very long time, years, to sort of figure it out. And I'm not sure I ever became an expert. I'm really excited that we now have a resource, Hacking Project-Based Learning, part of the Hack Learning series. It is sort of that blueprint for how to really do PBL and inquiry in the classroom. What I have found in talking to colleagues and being out in the field is that many educators struggle. And I know you guys have coined a really cool phrase called PBL paralysis. We've got that, right? So, Erin Murphy, tell us, and then Ross follow up, what's PBL paralysis and what do we need to be doing about it?
So PBL paralysis is really this word that we kind of stumbled upon. You know, when we think about what are the barriers keeping people from wanting to engage in project-based learning, those barriers, I think that they really become almost debilitating. They make people sort of freeze in their tracks and they keep them from wanting to, again, start project-based learning. That idea of being like frozen and unable to begin is sort of where paralysis came from. There are definitely a certain what we'll call symptoms that come up over and over and over again that are the things that are keeping people from wanting to engage. One of them in particular is, the lack of professional development. Because in one circumstance, we have a district that maybe is not really considering project-based learning. It's not something that's necessarily on their radar as a priority. So there are teachers who want to get started but feel like they don't have the professional development available to them. And then there's other scenarios where there is a district who is, starting to dabble in project-based learning and they're offering some professional development, but it maybe isn't quite meeting the needs of what, various teachers might want or require in order to get their feet wet. Or it's not maybe meeting them where they are in their project-based learning experience. And that idea of like, okay, I don't have these resources, I haven't had this specific training, it really keeps people from wanting to jump in.
Ross, do you see the same thing, or is there anything else to this paralysis that you observe?
Well, I think it's important to note that this type of paralysis probably exists to some extent anytime we're promoting change in our schools or in our districts. And I know that's something that Erin and I saw as we worked together as teachers, and now as administrators, being the ones to, for the most part, trying to promote the change. It's definitely something we see. For instance, I know, speaking for myself, we've been promoting writing workshop over the past year or so at the elementary level. So no matter what you're doing, whether it's the writing workshop, standards-based grading practices, or anything like that, you're going to meet some type of paralysis and some type of resistance because you're really moving people outside of their comfort zones.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that this paralysis is a great word, and we've probably got listeners terrified. They're going, oh my goodness, I want to do PBL, and now they're saying I'm paralyzed. What am I going to do next? But the great thing is that's what we do in Hack Learning. We present a problem and then a hack, some sort of a solution that in most cases is fairly easy. It might take some work to implement, but it's fairly easy and oftentimes overlooked. And I'm excited that we have two project-based learning experts here to to give us those hacks and to also give us some what you can do tomorrow strategies, because we don't love the 5-year plan. We know they may be needed, but we're very big on practicality to give our listeners something. A lot of our listeners tell me they listen to the show on their way to work. Now, how cool is it that they'll be listening to this, maybe driving to work, and we're going to give them something that they can use immediately. So let's dive right in. Erin Murphy, get us started. Tell us a little bit about how we're going to hack project-based learning, how we're going to eliminate this paralysis.
I kind of want to jump back and connect to the problem that I had initially stated, this idea of professional development, because I think the truth of the matter is it doesn't matter how much professional development, you could do a week-long training on project-based learning, and you still might not feel like exactly the need that you have is being met. So the real idea is just finding a small way to get started. It doesn't need to be that you're going to completely rewrite an entire unit of study into a project-based learning experience. It may be as simple as like starting with a quick little 2-day challenge, something that you want, again, this idea of starting tomorrow, just a quick design or sort of like a little test of or a pilot of your project-based learning experience. So again, trying to find that little small way to start that you can gradually add to that as you sort of, gain your comfort with the experience, and never forget the fact that you have this entire network of people, whether you're using Twitter or Voxer or wherever you find your support network outside of your district. All those people are, there's surely someone in the same boat as you, and there's people out there that want to support you, that are, who have tried it and have, taken the lumps maybe, or have figured out what works and doesn't work, and they want to help you.
So Ross Cooper, tell us something that we can do tomorrow to really start with project-based learning.
So how do you know the students are going to learn what they're supposed to learn, and how is it going to be graded? One way to make sure that they learn what they're supposed to learn is by looking at your guiding resources, or starting with your academic standards and making sure that you tie into that. Those high-impact academic standards that call for students to do some type of high-order thinking or strategic thinking. But in regards to just plain the assessment piece, a lot of times we think rubric, right? That's the first thing that we look at, and we become intimidated because, as Erin and I say, this idea of this traditional rubric is pretty archaic. It's full of these teacher-built descriptors, it's full of columns, it's full of these cells, and it's like, how the heck do I do this? How do I do this while making sure it's not stifling creative thinking, and we still want students to have ownership of the work as well. So it's a tad difficult. So one of the things that we propose is you still want some type of rubric. In fact, Erin and I have kind of rethought the rubric from the ground up, and we call it a progress assessment tool, or a PAT. So you still have your learning targets and what you want your students to learn, but along with those, you have student-created examples of what that might look like, or descriptors and bullet points of what that might look like. And by the students being the ones who create those descriptors rather than the teacher, they then have a clear idea of the type of work they should be generating, and they have more ownership over their work. And along with that, the teacher is just providing feedback along the way, because if we really want students to move ahead with their work, it's all about that feedback, and it's not giving a student a grade. Because as we know, once you give a grade, the learning stops. But if we really want students to learn, which is the goal, it's all about feedback. With project-based learning, you're really engaging the students in rigorous learning, high-order thinking, hands-on learning. It wouldn't then make sense to hit them with a multiple-choice test, right? That test rote memorization. So you really want that paper and pencil test that, could be probably in the form of maybe some multiple choice, but for the most part, it would be open-ended questions like essay questions that promote high-order thinking, that really assess what you want students to understand as a result of their project-based learning experiences. And then those would tie into the standards as well, because it's not either or. It's not, I'm going to teach the standards or I'm going to do project-based learning. There's ways for project-based learning to encompass both. And one final thought is what Erin and I have found is by using those pencil and paper tests, they're not your typical pencil and paper tests because they're not multiple choice, they're essay questions. We have found that provides a really nice balance for students and parents who are kind of aware of this whole progressive nature of project-based learning.
Okay, so I'm hearing some tremendous things about PBL, but I feel maybe that I may still be a little paralyzed. So I'm gonna do what we love in hack learning, and I'm gonna push back a little bit, and I'm gonna start with Erin. Erin, you said that what you can do tomorrow's strategy, if you're just starting in this incredible PBL experience, is getting kids to sort of dive in, pick something that they can just start with. I'm thinking, okay, but that just sort of sounds like my regular day. It sounds like a lesson plan. So give me something that I can picture, that I can all wrap my arms around if I say, okay, I'm gonna do this. Give me an activity that is that launch to PBL.
So one of my favorite activities is the having kids design balloon-powered cars. Very minimal supplies that you need, but it gets kids really involved in the design process and the idea of iteration. And really, you give them very little direction or restraint, except for saying that I want you to design a vehicle that will move, and the only power that it can have to make itself move is the power of a balloon deflating. And, then you give them some random supplies. They're allowed to use the things that are around the room, and they get sort of into this mindset of, receiving feedback from the project itself. So either it moves or it doesn't move once they put their design together. Receiving feedback from each other. So, I don't know that you should put the balloon there because watch, when it starts to deflate, now it's pushing the air down instead of up, and it's pushing into the car, and it's not going to move. And then they're learning how to receive that feedback from the teacher too. And it also, as the instructor, it puts you in this interesting place where you can sort of practice not giving kids too much information. Kids need that sort of a little bit of a productive struggle. They need to work a little bit in order to have that aha moment. And oftentimes when we're facilitating, we almost want to save them. We want to jump in and give them the answer so that, they feel successful immediately. So it's a good time for you as the teacher to practice not giving them the directions right away.
Just going to say that's just hacky. I just love that. The idea of, first of all, productive struggle, but then to actually tell teachers we need to practice sort of this patience, because you're right, Erin. I mean, we want to jump in, right? I mean, you see kids struggling, and it's just sort of our nature. Teachers help, that's what we do. So just jump in. Oh, wait, let me help you. But we sort of have to practice patience and say, let's let them struggle and maybe work their way through a little bit. So I love that. Yeah, and the balloon thing, man, I'm picturing that. I see balloons flying everywhere, and it sounds like a lot of fun. Okay, so Ross, back to you. Erin saying she's got this cool activity with the balloons and and this idea of productive struggle, and telling teachers, hey, just back off a little bit, let them work their way through it. Love that. So then you going back to what you were talking about with assessing PBL, and you talked about that cool progress assessment tool, but then I heard you say something about essays. Now, as a teacher, I might be saying, okay, well, I've got this project. I got all this stuff that's going into maybe this balloon activity and powering the cars and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. And now you're telling me I got to have an essay too? What's up with that?
Yeah, I mean, so there's many different ways to do that. We're big proponents of, students writing for an authentic audience. So if you can make it a little bit more authentic by having them blog or having them engage in some type of discussion forum, or even going back and forth like we are right now, like in a conference call or Voxer or Google Hangout or anything like that. When it comes to project-based learning, we just don't want to throw a whole bunch of stuff at the wall and cross our fingers and hope it sticks and the students, learn what they need to learn. Oftentimes when we gravitate towards those a little bit more concrete assessments, not saying traditional, but a little bit more concrete, we're really making sure that the students are learning what they're supposed to learn, especially when they're engaged in group work. And I could say as a teacher, I made some mistakes, and, Erin's perfect. She doesn't make any mistakes, or at least she'll say that she's perfect.
See, we do get along.
Yeah.
Right.
So
he knows it.
Yeah. But there were times when my students engaged in group work and the group work was graded. That's something I could say we're not a fan of. So group work is okay, but you want to make sure they're being assessed and possibly graded individually because the proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, and you've talked about so many different ways to do it. I even heard cool tools in there. Voxer and maybe blogging or a Google Hangout or something to share that learning experience. All amazing things, and all I know packed neatly into hacking project-based learning. 10 Easy Steps to PBL and Inquiry in the Classroom, now available from Ross Cooper and Erin Murphy. And I know when people are reading that, they're going to be very excited about it, and they're going to have a plan for integrating cool PBL and inquiry. But I think they're going to want to continue the conversation just like you guys were talking about. So let's give them a place to go. So tell us, where can we reach out to you or read more from you, anything at all to really connect and become experts at PBL?
Sure. I would love to continue the conversation. I'm most easily reached on Twitter at Murphy's Musings 5, and my website, where we love to share information about project-based learning and all things education, is psumurfett, MURPHETTE.com. So psumurfett.com.
So on Twitter, I'm at RossCoops31, RossCoops31@gmail.com, and my website, Cooper on Curriculum, could also be found at RossCoops31.com.
All right, outstanding. So there's plenty of places to connect. There's other places to go for more amazing resources on PBL. And of course, we can continue this conversation on Twitter using hashtag HackingPBL. And I know Ross and Erin are there often as well. So Ross Cooper and Erin Murphy, we're very excited about hacking project-based learning and very excited about everything you've shared today. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Hey, are you ready to explore the amazing world of project-based learning? Check out Hacking Project-Based Learning, 10 Easy Steps to PBL and Inquiry in the Classroom. It's available now at hackingpbl.com. Check it out today, Hacking Project-Based Learning at hackingpbl.com. As always, we continue the conversation at hashtag HackLearning on Twitter and on the show notes page at hacklearningpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. See you next time.